From the ashes of the Roman Republic rose something the world had never seen before. An empire that would endure for over 1,000 years and leave its mark on every aspect of human civilization. Augustus Caesar, the former Octavian, had accomplished what no Roman before him had managed. He had made himself master of the known world while maintaining the illusion of republican government. What followed was the greatest period of peace and prosperity in ancient history. The Pax Romana would stretch from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. Roman law, Roman architecture, Roman culture would spread to every corner of the empire. But even the mightiest empire carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. Today, we witness both the greatest triumph and the ultimate tragedy of the ancient world, the rise and fall of Imperial Rome. This is the final chapter in our journey through Roman history. The man who became Augustus understood a fundamental truth. Romans would accept a king, but only if you never called him one. When Octavian addressed the Senate in 27 BCE, he performed a masterpiece of political theater. He formally returned all power to the Senate and people of Rome, then graciously accepted when they begged him to remain as their protector. His new title, Augustus, meant the revered one. Religious without being royal. He called himself princeps, the first citizen, not emperor. Yet in reality, he controlled every legion, every province, and every major decision in the empire. Augustus's genius lay not in conquering Rome, but in transforming it. He found a city of brick and left it marble. He created a professional civil service, a standing army, and a postal system that connected Britain to Syria. More importantly, he solved the problem that had destroyed the Republic: how to manage an empire with republican institutions. His answer was simple: you don't. You create new institutions disguised as old ones. The Augustan settlement lasted because it gave everyone what they wanted. The Senate kept their dignity and their privileges. The people got bread, circuses, and peace. The provinces got honest government and economic prosperity. Augustus ruled for 45 years, longer than any Roman leader before or after. When he died in 14 CE, Romans could barely remember a time without him. The Republic was ancient history. The empire was the only reality they knew. Augustus's greatest achievement was not military conquest, but something far more valuable: peace. For over 2 centuries, the Roman Empire enjoyed unprecedented stability. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, stretched from Scotland to Sudan, from Portugal to Persia. This wasn't just the absence of war, it was the presence of prosperity. Roman roads connected every major city. Roman law governed every transaction. Roman coins provided a stable currency from Britannia to Babylon. A merchant could travel from Londinium to Alexandria knowing that Roman legions protected the roads. Roman judges would settle disputes, and Roman ports would welcome his goods. Never before had such a vast area enjoyed such security and prosperity. The Mediterranean became Mare Nostrum, our sea, a Roman lake crossed by ships carrying everything from British wool to Chinese silk. The empire wasn't just political, it was an economic miracle that lifted millions from poverty and created the ancient world's first truly global economy. Augustus's immediate successors proved that absolute power doesn't always corrupt absolutely. Sometimes it drives you completely insane. Tiberius, Augustus's stepson, was a capable but deeply unpopular ruler who spent his final years as a hermit on the island of Capri, governing the empire through angry letters and growing increasingly paranoid. His successor Caligula started promisingly but soon revealed a megalomania that shocked even Romans accustomed to imperial excess. He declared himself a living god, appointed his horse as consul, and allegedly planned to move the capital to Alexandria, where he could be worshipped as a pharaoh. Caligula's assassination in 41 CE brought his uncle Claudius to power, a scholar whom everyone had dismissed as a stammering fool. Claudius proved that appearances deceive. He conquered Britain, built aqueducts that still function today, and expanded Roman citizenship throughout the empire. But the dynasty's most infamous member was Nero, who came to power at 16 and proceeded to murder his mother, his wife, and anyone else who inconvenienced him. When fire devastated Rome in 64 CE, many blamed Nero himself, leading to the legend that he fiddled while Rome burned. Nero's persecution of Christians, whom he blamed for the fire, introduced the world to a new kind of religious martyrdom. His reign ended with suicide in 68 CE, bringing the Julio-Claudian dynasty to a bloody close. The year of 4 emperors in 69 CE nearly tore the empire apart, but from the chaos emerged Vespasian, a practical soldier who restored order and dignity to imperial rule. Vespasian's greatest monument was the Colosseum, the largest amphitheater ever built. Its opening games lasted 100 days and featured gladiatorial combats, wild animal hunts, and even mock naval battles in the flooded arena. This wasn't just entertainment, it was political theater designed to remind Romans of their empire's power and their emperor's generosity. The message was clear: Rome could afford to waste enormous resources on public spectacles. Vespasian's son Titus earned eternal fame by completing the Colosseum, but also eternal infamy by destroying Jerusalem in 70 CE. The siege was so brutal that it traumatized even hardened Roman soldiers. The Temple of Solomon was burned, its treasures carried off to Rome, and the Jewish people scattered to the winds. The Flavian dynasty ended with Domitian, whose increasing paranoia and cruelty led to his assassination in 96 CE. But they had established a crucial precedent. The empire could survive bad emperors if its institutions remained strong. The 2nd century CE witnessed the Roman Empire at its absolute peak under 5 consecutive rulers whom history remembers as the Good Emperors. Trajan expanded the empire to its greatest extent, conquering Dacia, modern Romania, and briefly capturing the Parthian capital of Ctesiphon. His column in Rome, covered with spiral reliefs depicting his victories, stands as one of the world's greatest works of art. But Trajan was more than a conqueror, he was a builder. His Forum in Rome was ancient architecture's greatest achievement, while his markets constituted the world's first shopping mall. Under Trajan, the empire reached from Scotland to Iraq, from Morocco to Romania. Hadrian, Trajan's successor, was perhaps history's most cultured emperor. Architect, poet, philosopher, and lover of all things Greek. His wall across northern Britain still stands as a monument to Roman engineering, while his rebuilt Pantheon in Rome remains one of the world's architectural wonders. Hadrian traveled constantly, visiting every province and transforming the empire through his personal attention. He founded cities, built libraries, and promoted Greek culture throughout the Roman world. The greatest of the good emperors was Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king whose Meditations remain one of the finest works of Stoic philosophy ever written. Here was Plato's dream realized, a ruler who governed through wisdom rather than force. Yet even Marcus Aurelius faced constant challenges: plague, barbarian invasions, and internal rebellions. His death in 180 CE marked the end of the Pax Romana and the beginning of Rome's long decline. In a remote province of the empire during the reign of Augustus, a Jewish carpenter's son named Jesus began preaching a message that would ultimately transform the Roman world. Christianity's early growth was slow but steady. The new religion appealed especially to the urban poor, women, and slaves, groups that traditional Roman religion largely ignored. Roman authorities initially viewed Christians as just another Jewish sect, but they gradually realized this new faith posed a unique threat to imperial authority. Christians refused to worship the emperor, serve in the army, or participate in civic festivals. They seemed to be creating a state within the state. Persecutions began under Nero and continued sporadically for nearly 3 centuries. Christians were crucified, thrown to wild animals, and burned alive as human torches. Yet every persecution seemed to create more converts. As the church father Tertullian observed, the blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. St. Paul's missionary journeys had already spread Christianity throughout the Greek-speaking East. By 300 CE, perhaps 10% of the empire was Christian, a substantial minority that could no longer be ignored. The emperor who changed everything was Constantine, who came to power in 306 CE during a period of civil war and chaos. According to legend, before the crucial Battle of Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, Constantine saw a vision of the Christian cross in the sky with the words, "In this sign conquer." Whether the vision was real or invented, Constantine won the battle and attributed his victory to the Christian God. The Edict of Milan in 313 CE granted religious tolerance throughout the empire, ending centuries of Christian persecution. But Constantine went further. He actively promoted Christianity, building churches, favoring Christian officials, and calling the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE to resolve theological disputes. Most dramatically, Constantine founded a new capital, Constantinople, the New Rome, on the site of ancient Byzantia. This Christian city would outlast Rome itself, surviving until 1453 CE. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity had become the empire's official religion. The religion born in a stable in Bethlehem now sat on the throne of the Caesars. The crisis of the 3rd century nearly destroyed the Roman Empire through a perfect storm of internal collapse and external pressure. In 50 years, the empire saw 50 emperors, most dying violent deaths within months of taking power. The imperial title became a death sentence as generals, governors, and senators fought endless civil wars for the purple. Meanwhile, barbarian tribes pressed against every frontier. The Goths ravaged the Balkans, the Alemanni invaded Italy, and the Persians captured entire Roman armies in the east. For the first time since Hannibal, foreign enemies threatened Rome itself. Inflation destroyed the economy as emperors debased the currency to pay their armies. Silver coins became copper coins covered with silver paint. Trade collapsed, cities emptied, and the empire seemed to be dissolving into chaos. By 260 CE, the empire had effectively split into 3 parts: the Gallic Empire in the west, the Palmyrene Empire in the east, and the Rump Roman Empire in between. The Eternal City controlled little more than Italy. It seemed impossible that anything could save Rome from complete collapse, but the empire's greatest crisis would produce one of its most capable rulers. Diocletian was a soldier emperor who understood that the empire had grown too large for any one man to govern effectively. His solution was radical: divide power among 4 rulers in a system called the Tetrarchy. 2 senior emperors, Augusti, and 2 junior emperors, Caesares, would govern different parts of the empire, with succession planned in advance to prevent civil wars. It was a return to republican principles of shared power but with imperial efficiency. Diocletian also reformed the economy, the army, and the administration. He froze wages and prices to stop inflation, reorganized the legions to face new threats, and created a professional bureaucracy to govern the provinces. Most importantly, he formalized the division of the empire into East and West, a split that would become permanent after his death. The Roman Empire was becoming 2 empires with different languages, cultures, and destinies. Diocletian's reforms saved the empire, but they also transformed it beyond recognition. The Rome of Augustus was as foreign to Diocletian's empire as the Republic had been to Augustus. The division of the empire became permanent under Theodosius I, the last emperor to rule both East and West. When he died in 395 CE, his sons inherited separate empires that would never again be reunited. The Eastern Empire, centered on Constantinople, controlled the wealthy provinces of Anatolia, Syria, and Egypt. Greek-speaking and increasingly Christian, it would evolve into the Byzantine Empire and survive for another 1,000 years. The Western Empire, still centered on Rome, controlled Italy, Gaul, Spain, Britain, and North Africa. Latin-speaking and economically struggling, it would face the full force of barbarian invasions with diminishing resources. The 2 halves of the empire often viewed each other as rivals rather than allies. They fought over control of the Balkans, competed for barbarian allies, and sometimes refused to help each other against common enemies. This division reflected deeper changes in the Roman world. The empire had grown too diverse, too complex, and too threatened to remain unified. What had begun as an administrative convenience became a cultural and political reality. The Western Empire's decline accelerated in the 5th century as barbarian pressure became irresistible. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 CE under their king Alaric, the first time in 8 centuries that foreign enemies had entered the Eternal City. The Vandals repeated the feat in 455 CE, giving the English language the word vandalism. Most terrifying of all was Attila the Hun, the scourge of God, whose nomadic empire stretched from Germany to Central Asia. Only the diplomatic skill of Pope Leo the Great prevented Attila from sacking Rome itself. These weren't random raids but massive population movements. Entire peoples, Goths, Vandals, Franks, Burgundians, were settling within the empire's borders, creating kingdoms that paid lip service to Roman authority while governing themselves. The Western emperors became figureheads controlled by barbarian generals who held the real power. The empire wasn't being conquered, it was being absorbed. The end, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. In 476 CE, a barbarian general named Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, ironically named Romulus Augustulus, combining the names of Rome's legendary founder and its first emperor. Romulus Augustulus was just a teenager, a puppet ruler controlled by his father. When Odoacer sent the imperial regalia to Constantinople and declared himself king of Italy, few Romans even noticed. The Western Roman Empire died not with a bang but with a whimper. There were no dramatic final battles, no heroic last stands. The empire simply stopped existing. Yet this was hardly the end of Rome's story. The Eastern Empire continued as Byzantium for another 1,000 years. Roman law influenced legal systems worldwide. Latin evolved into Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. Roman architecture inspired buildings from Washington to Moscow. Christianity, which Rome had first persecuted then adopted, carried Roman organizational principles throughout the world. The Catholic Church became, in many ways, the Roman Empire's truest heir. Most importantly, Rome had proven that diverse peoples could live together under common laws and shared values. This vision of universal citizenship and equal justice would inspire revolutions and republics for millennia to come. Rome fell, but Roman civilization endured. Every time we use a word derived from Latin, every time we see a building with columns and domes, every time we witness the peaceful transfer of power in a republic, we see Rome's influence. The Romans gave the world its first truly global civilization, its most influential legal system, and its longest-lasting political institutions. They showed that empire could mean more than conquest. It could mean the spread of law, prosperity, and human dignity. Yet Rome also demonstrated the fragility of even the mightiest civilizations. Internal division, external pressure, economic collapse, and cultural transformation combined to bring down an empire that had seemed eternal. The lesson of Rome is both humbling and inspiring. All human achievements are temporary, but their influence can be immortal. Our journey through Roman history is complete. We have witnessed the rise and fall of the greatest civilization the ancient world ever produced. From a small city on the Tiber River, Rome grew to rule an empire spanning 3 continents. Through monarchy, republic, and empire, the Romans shaped every aspect of Western civilization. They gave us our laws, our languages, our architecture, and our ideals of citizenship and public service. They showed that human societies could aspire to greatness while maintaining justice and prosperity for millions. Yet Rome's story is also a warning. Success can breed complacency, wealth can corrupt virtue, and even the mightiest empire carries within itself the seeds of its own destruction. Perhaps that is Rome's greatest gift to posterity, not just its achievements, but its failures, which remind us that civilization is always fragile and must always be defended. As the Romans themselves might have said, "Sic transit gloria mundi," thus passes the glory of the world. But some glories, like Rome's, cast shadows that last forever.